Silence is not weakness, it is not a retreat, and it is not emptiness. Silence is power. It is the quiet strength of a calm mind. The quiet confidence of a person who doesn't need to prove anything. The quiet focus of someone who knows what really matters. In a world full of noise, where everyone is talking, reacting, posting, arguing, silence might seem passive or strange. But to the Stoics, silence was one of the highest forms of strength. They believed it was better to pause than to rush, better to listen than to shout, better to reflect than to react. This article is called The Power of Silence, because silence, when practiced with purpose, can shape who we are. It helps us stay calm under pressure. It gives us space to think clearly. And most of all, it helps us live with more self-control and peace. The ancient Stoics, thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, didn't just talk about silence, they lived it. Not in a dramatic or extreme way, but through daily practice. They believed that what we say, and more importantly, what we choose not to say, can show how wise we really are. Take Epictetus, for example. He reminded his students that we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth, for a reason. We are built to listen more than we speak. Or Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself in his private journal to speak little and only when needed. These weren't just polite habits, they were tools for becoming better people. To the Stoics, silence wasn't just about keeping quiet. It was about building strength inside. It meant not reacting to every insult, not speaking just to fill the space, not chasing attention or praise. It meant using words with care, and often using none at all. In today's world, silence might feel uncomfortable. We're constantly surrounded by sound, by scrolling, by endless conversation. People are expected to have instant opinions. We reward the loudest voices and the fastest takes. But this environment can make us reactive, anxious, and even disconnected from ourselves. That's why the Stoic idea of silence is more important now than ever. Silence is a way to create space, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It helps us step back from the chaos and remember what really matters. It helps us live on our own terms, not just respond to the noise around us. This article will explore silence in 7 key parts, all grounded in Stoic philosophy. First, we'll look at how the Stoics saw silence in relation to logos, the rational force behind nature. Then we'll explore how silence helps us master our inner thoughts and emotions. We'll look at why silence is a moral choice, especially when it's easier to argue. We'll see how silence affects our relationships, how it can be used in times of political conflict, and how the Stoics practiced silence in their daily lives. Finally, we'll bring it all together to see how silence can help us live with wisdom and freedom. At its heart, this isn't an article about saying nothing. It's an article about saying less and meaning more. About thinking before we speak. About learning when to step back and when to stay still. Because is not an escape, but it's a form of presence. A way of being fully in the world, but not controlled by it. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Sometimes the strongest response is none at all. So let us begin. Let's listen to the Stoics, to ourselves, and to the quiet power we carry within us. To understand why silence matters so deeply to the Stoics, we have to start with one of their most important ideas: logos. In Stoic philosophy, logos is the reason, order, and intelligence behind everything in the universe. It's not just logic, it's the deep structure of reality. It's the reason why seasons change, why fire rises and water flows, why nature moves in patterns. The Stoics believed that this rational order was not separate from us. We are part of it. Every human being, they said, carries a piece of this logos within. That means we're not just physical bodies, we're rational souls. We have the power to think, to reason, and to choose. And when we live in harmony with that inner reason, we live in harmony with nature itself. Now here's where silence comes in. To live according to Logos, we must be able to hear it. But Logos doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't force itself on us. It speaks in quiet reflection, in clear thinking, in calm understanding. And if we're constantly reacting, constantly talking, constantly distracted, we won't hear it. This is why silence is so powerful to the Stoics. Silence is how we make room for reason. It's how we pause before we judge. It's how we stop ourselves from being pulled around by emotions or by other people's opinions. Think about a stormy sea. If you want to see your reflection in water, it has to be still. The mind works the same way. Silence stills the waters. It lets us see clearly. Silence as alignment with nature. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself that life is short and that words should not be wasted. In his meditations, he wrote, "Let your words be few and well chosen." This wasn't just advice for better speaking. It was a call to align speech with truth, to let words flow from wisdom, not impulse. In another place, he says, "Is anything said better by leaving it unsaid?" A powerful question, one that only silence can answer. To Marcus, every word should serve a purpose. If it didn't help truth, help someone else, or improve the soul, it was better left unsaid. This is the heart of Stoic speech. Say only what is needed, at the right time in the right way. Anything more isn't freedom, it's noise. Epictetus and the practice of restraint. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-teacher, spoke directly to students about the dangers of idle talk. He warned them not to fall into gossip or pointless conversations, not because talking was bad, but because it was a distraction from the work of the soul. He said, "Be silent for the most part, or speak only what is necessary and in few words." Why such strong advice? Because words have power. Once spoken, they shape how we think, how others see us, and even who we become. If we speak carelessly, we live carelessly. But if we choose silence, we choose to live on purpose. Epictetus believed that silence creates strength. When we speak less, we observe more. When we wait before reacting, we act with clarity. And when we don't rush to give opinions, we leave room for deeper truth to emerge from the Logos within G. The Stoics believed that the same reason that orders the stars and the seasons also lives in us. This means that silence isn't just about holding your tongue, it's about creating space for your higher self to lead. Seneca wrote, "Speech is the mirror of the soul. As a man speaks, so is he." If that's true, then silence is also a mirror. It shows us what's really going on inside, what we're afraid of, what we desire, what we value. It's a moment of truth. That's why the Stoics treated silence as a kind of spiritual discipline, not just to speak less, but to live better. To be guided not by ego or emotion, but by Logos, the quiet, steady voice of reason. We usually think of silence as something outside of us, a quiet room, an empty forest, a moment without noise. But for the Stoics, the most important silence is the one inside. Inner silence is not the absence of thoughts. It's the ability to control them. It's the skill of choosing which thoughts to listen to and which to let go. The Stoics believe that our mind is where the real battle of life takes place. Not in politics, not in public debates, not even in arguments with others. The real struggle is between reason and impulse, clarity and confusion, peace and panic. And it all happens inside us. Epictetus put it simply, It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. This one idea is at the heart of Stoic psychology. We don't suffer because of what happens. We suffer because of how we interpret it. That means we can train our minds to suffer less simply by thinking differently. The role of impressions. The Stoics called our first thoughts or reactions impressions, or phantasia in Greek. These impressions come automatically. Someone cuts us off in traffic. We feel anger. We hear bad news. We panic. We get praised. We feel proud. The problem isn't the impression itself. It's what we do with it. The Stoics taught that we should pause and examine each impression before accepting it. Ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this in my control? This moment of pause is where inner silence begins. It's not about shutting down all thoughts. It's about creating a small space between the trigger and the response. A space where we can choose. That choice, that little moment, is freedom. Silence before judgment. Seneca warned against rushing to judgment. He said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Our minds can take a single event and turn it into a storm of fear or anger. But with practice, we can step back from that storm. Imagine a courtroom in your mind. Every thought is a witness. Every emotion is trying to persuade you. But as the judge, you don't need to accept every argument. You can say, "Let me think." That's inner silence in action. It's the ability to hold off your opinion, to wait, to reflect, to be still before reacting. Marcus Aurelius described this as the discipline of assent, the power to say yes or no to your own thoughts. The inner citadel. In Stoic thinking, each person has what's called an inner citadel, a stronghold within the self that cannot be touched by the outside world. No matter what happens out there, loss, pain, chaos, you still control how you respond. But to reach that citadel, you have to go through silence, not just once, but over and over again. It's a daily practice of turning inward, quieting the noise, and listening to what's truly under your control. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to retreat into this inner space. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. This retreat doesn't mean hiding. It means returning to the part of you that doesn't panic, doesn't rush, doesn't shout. The part that simply sees clearly and acts wisely. Modern distraction versus Stoic attention. Today, our minds are under siege. We're bombarded by alerts, opinions, media, marketing. Every moment is a chance to react. But this kind of constant reaction drains us. It scatters our attention. It feeds anxiety and leaves us feeling overwhelmed. The Stoics were teaching the opposite. Don't let your mind be ruled by noise. Guard your thoughts. Choose them wisely. This is not about ignoring reality. It's about protecting your ability to respond with reason. It's about making sure your thoughts serve you, not control you. In this way, inner silence becomes a kind of shield, not to block out the world, but to stop the world from pulling you apart. Building inner silence. A practice. So how do we build this silence? Start with breath. Just take a moment, breathe, and notice the space between your thoughts. Question first reactions. Ask, is this helpful? Is it true? Is it mine to control? Write things down. Like Marcus Aurelius, use journaling to slow down and reflect. Avoid instant opinions. Not every thought deserves a response. Not every impression deserves assent. Inner silence is not something you achieve once and for all. It's something you practice. It's a habit, a skill, and over time, it becomes a refuge. In Stoicism, silence is more than a tool for clear thinking. It's a moral choice. Choosing when to speak and when to stay silent is part of living a good and virtuous life. The Stoics believe that words are powerful. Every time we speak, we affect others. We can build trust or break it. We can bring peace or stir conflict. That's why, for the Stoics, speaking was never just about expressing yourself. It was about acting with wisdom and responsibility. To them, silence wasn't about hiding the truth. It was about speaking only when truth, timing, and purpose come together. Speech and virtue go hand in hand in Stoicism. The highest goal is to live a life of virtue, to act with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. That includes how we talk. Seneca wrote, "No one is fit to rule who is not master of themselves," and that includes their tongue. He saw unrestrained speech as a form of weakness. A person who speaks without thinking is like someone who eats without tasting or runs without direction. They are being led by impulse, not by reason. Restraint in speech shows maturity. It means you're not trying to win every argument. You're not speaking to impress. You're not trying to fill the silence out of fear or habit. You're choosing your words carefully because you know they matter. The right time to speak. The Stoics often talked about kairos, the right time or the right measure. Even a true statement can be harmful if it's spoken in the wrong way or at the wrong time. Imagine someone who blurts out a harsh truth in the middle of a crisis. Are they being honest or just careless? The Stoics would say, wisdom knows not just what to say, but when and how to say it. This is where silence becomes a moral act. Sometimes the best way to respect someone or to de-escalate a tense moment is to stay quiet. Silence can protect peace. It can prevent harm. As Epictetus advised, if your silence will be better than your speech, keep silent. This isn't about avoiding hard conversations. It's about approaching them with care. Stoic silence is not cowardice. It's discipline. Silence in the face of insults, and one of the hardest times to stay silent is when someone insults us. Our instinct is to defend ourselves, to fight back, to have the last word. But the Stoics saw this as a trap. If someone insults you, but you stay calm and silent, you're showing that their words have no power over you. You're not controlled by anger or ego. You are choosing to protect your peace instead of feeding the fire. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's moral silence in action. Choosing not to match rudeness with rudeness. Choosing to stay true to your values, even when provoked. Empty talk versus purposeful speech. The Stoics also warned against empty or idle talk, speech that serves no real purpose. Not because it's always harmful, but because it takes up space that could be used for something better. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, believed in something called eulogia, speaking well. This meant speaking with clarity, honesty, and intention. Not gossip, not small talk just to pass time, not constant chatter. Today, we're surrounded by talk. Social media, news, texts, opinions, it never stops. But very little of it is meaningful. The Stoics remind us to ask, is what I'm about to say necessary? Is it helpful? Is it kind? If not, maybe silence is the better choice. Silence builds integrity. There's also a deeper reason the Stoics valued silence. It keeps us honest. If we speak less, we're less likely to lie, exaggerate, or say things we don't mean. We're more likely to stay aligned with our values. Seneca pointed out that silence is a way to build inner strength. When you're not trying to control how others see you through your words, you can start to accept yourself as you really are. And that's a form of freedom. This doesn't mean we have to be silent all the time. The Stoics weren't monks. They engaged in politics, taught in public, and wrote letters full of guidance and encouragement. But they never spoke without thinking, and they never spoke more than needed. Stoicism is often seen as a solitary path, calm, quiet, and inward-looking. But the Stoics didn't believe in cutting ourselves off from people. They believed we are all part of one human family. We are social beings by nature. Still, even in relationships, the Stoics taught the value of silence. Not as a way to avoid connection, but as a way to deepen it. In fact, silence can strengthen our friendships, improve our communication, and help us become better listeners. When used wisely, it's a gift we give to others, not just a tool we use for ourselves. Listening as a form of wisdom. In any conversation, the temptation is to speak, to share our opinion, to give advice, to make sure we're heard. But Stoic silence invites us to do something different, to listen deeply. When we listen, truly listen, we learn more. We understand people better. We give them space to be seen and heard. And often, that's exactly what they need. Seneca once said, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." Understanding starts with silence. It starts with patience, with putting aside our urge to respond and simply being present. In this way, silence is not a barrier, it's a bridge. Avoiding verbal pollution. The Stoics were careful about what they allowed into their minds, and that included the kinds of conversations they took part in. They warned against gossip, drama, and shallow talk. Not because they were uptight or antisocial, but because they believed words shape character. The people we spend time with, and the things we talk about, can either lift us up or pull us down. If you spend your time in noisy, negative talk, you'll start to carry that noise with you. But if you choose quiet reflection and meaningful conversation, your mind stays clearer, calmer, and stronger. This is where social silence comes in, not just being quiet, but being intentional. Choosing when to speak, when to listen, and when to walk away. Silence and emotional presence. Sometimes when a friend is hurting, we feel pressure to say something wise or comforting, but the Stoics understood that silence itself can be healing. Being present in silence, just sitting with someone without trying to fix everything, can say more than words ever could. It shows strength, respect, and care. Silence can be a kind of emotional support. It allows others to open up at their own pace. It shows that we're not rushing them or turning their pain into a problem to solve. We're simply there. In this way, Stoic silence can be an act of love. Balancing engagement and stillness. The Stoics didn't reject society. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Seneca advised emperors. Epictetus taught in public. They believed in doing your duty, helping others, and being part of the world. But they also believed in protecting your peace. Even in the middle of noise, you don't have to speak just because everyone else is. You don't have to offer your opinion in every discussion. And you don't have to join every argument just to feel involved. You can be engaged without being loud. You can care without always commenting. That's what Stoic silence teaches us. It's about making space for connection, not clutter. A middle path between withdrawal and overexposure. Cicero, a Roman statesman and philosopher, wasn't a Stoic, but he respected their ideas. He once debated whether too much silence made a person seem cold or distant. His concern was that silence might create disconnection. But the Stoics weren't pushing for isolation. They were offering a middle path, one that avoids both extremes. Not complete withdrawal, not constant overexposure, but presence with boundaries, connection with clarity, speech with purpose. This is the kind of social silence that builds strong relationships, not shallow ones. We often think of silence as staying out of the way. In politics and public life, silence can even be seen as weakness, or worse, as complicity. But the Stoics had a more complex view. They believed that sometimes silence is not withdrawal, it's resistance. Sometimes silence is the most powerful statement you can make. The Stoics lived in dangerous times. Many of them faced emperors who ruled by fear. Speaking the truth could cost your career or your life. And yet, some Stoics chose silence not out of fear, but out of principle. They weren't being passive. They were making a stand. Silence as a form of protest. One of the clearest examples of this is Epictetus, a Roman senator and committed Stoic. Under the Emperor Nero, a violent and unpredictable ruler, Epictetus refused to flatter, refused to cheer, and refused to support cruelty. He didn't shout, he didn't lead a rebellion, he simply stayed silent. He stopped attending the Senate, he withdrew from public speeches. He quietly removed himself from systems he believed were unjust. And by doing nothing, he did something powerful. His silence made people uncomfortable. It sent a message louder than words, and eventually, it cost him his life. But in choosing silence, Epictetus showed what it meant to act with integrity. He would not lie, he would not play along. He chose to suffer rather than support evil. This is Stoic courage, calm, firm, and deeply rooted in values. Knowing when to speak and when to stop. The Stoics didn't believe in staying silent all the time. In fact, many of them did speak out through writing, teaching, or direct conversations. But they were always asking, is this the right time? Is this the right way? Will this do more good than harm? Sometimes the answer was yes, so they spoke. Sometimes the answer was no, so they stayed silent. This kind of silence isn't about being afraid. It's about being wise. Seneca, who advised the Emperor Nero before eventually falling out of favor, walked a careful line. He tried to offer honest counsel while avoiding direct confrontation. Some have criticized him for this. Others have seen it as a Stoic attempt to influence quietly, to help where he could, without throwing fuel on the fire. It's a reminder that Stoic silence isn't always black or white. It's not about always speaking up or never speaking up. It's about choosing carefully. Freedom from needing to be heard. One of the biggest differences between Stoicism and modern culture is how we think about being heard. Today we often feel the need to share our thoughts constantly, especially online. We're encouraged to comment, react, post, and respond. Silence can feel like invisibility, or even weakness. But the Stoics saw things differently. They believed that true freedom is not needing to be heard. You don't need to prove your point. You don't need to argue with everyone. You don't need to have the last word. If you know the truth and you live by it, that's enough. This doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop chasing validation. We act on principle, not applause. That's what gave Stoics their quiet strength. Stoicism in the modern world today, we face a new kind of public noise. News cycles never stop. Social media gives everyone a platform. Outrage spreads quickly. Opinions come fast and loud. In this environment, silence can feel unnatural, but it may be more important than ever. You don't have to speak on every issue. You don't have to explain yourself to strangers. You don't have to win every debate. In fact, choosing when not to speak can make your voice more powerful when you finally do. Stoic silence reminds us you don't need to make noise to make a difference. Some of the most powerful actions come from quiet conviction. From showing up, doing your duty, and refusing to participate in injustice, not by shouting, but by standing firm. What are practical exercises in silence? Silence isn't just an idea in Stoic philosophy. It's a practice. It's something you can build into your day, little by little. You don't have to retreat into the mountains or take a vow of silence. You just need to make space for quiet moments that bring clarity, calm, and control. Here are some simple but powerful ways to bring Stoic silence into your daily life. 1. Morning silence. Begin with stillness. Before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone, just sit in silence. This can be 5 minutes. It can be 1. Use that time to take a few deep breaths. Let your thoughts settle. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? Marcus Aurelius began many of his mornings with silent reflection. He wrote down reminders to himself, not to impress anyone, but to stay focused on what mattered. You can do the same. A quiet morning can shape your entire day.